My name is Mitch Bryars, and I generally do the iOS presentations on the second Wednesday of each month. How many here are new for the first time? Okay, one here, somebody else back there? Okay, good. Okay, so the meetings are open to the public. You're welcome to come anytime. The meetings are every Wednesday, generally 95% of the time at 11:30 till 11:45. We have one meeting on the third Monday of the month at 5 o'clock to about 6:30 in this room. A lot of times we have a guest speaker. We'll podcast in that meeting where they will be present. The first meeting of the month is a Q&A. Generally is handled by Jerry, our president, right here. I usually handle the second meeting of the month on iOS devices. Third meeting is Q&A with Jerry again. Fourth meeting is iLife.
Yes.
Soon to be something else, but same subject, with George. If we have a fifth meeting, it's generally a guest speaker.
It's something special.
Something special. Okay. If you want to become a member, our treasurer, Don, is in the back. He always sits in the back. The bad sign of the treasurer sits in the back because they just sneak out the door real quick with your money. But in any event, it's a whopping $20 a year to join, $25 a year for a family membership. There are some benefits with that. One being we have a discussion board where you can post questions and you will get many answers. The second is lynda.com, which I'm going to be using today. It's a service that once you're a member, you can email George and get a week's worth of classes for free at a time. And many times during the year, you can get a couple weeks. And we also have about 8 or 10 classes we do at Hodges University in the January to the beginning of March time frame. And they're on different subjects. I know last year I did a couple on iOS, the iPhone, and one on the iPad. Jerry did a couple on Mavericks.
Yes.
We had some people do, what did you do on Maryland last year?
Applications for the iPad.
Applications for the iPad. We had some, I think, on iLife and iWorks as well. So those are only available to members. They're 3-hour courses. That's 20 hours per 3-hour course.
$10.
Oh, $10 for a 3-hour course. I think that covers about everything, correct? If you're interested in becoming a member, Don has the applications in the back on the table, Don?
There's no table, but I have them.
You have them, okay.
I'm on a chair.
Okay. So, today I wanted to go over several features of iOS 8, and I'm going to be using lynda.com to do that. And lynda.com, of course, is the educational service that we subscribe to. We have 5 memberships, and as I mentioned before, you can, if you're a member, you can email George and say when is time available. He'll tell you, and then you can sign up and you'll get a week's worth of classes. So what I want to do is run a few of these. There's a new course. It's an excellent course that I've gone through in the last week. It's called iOS New Features. Let me get my handy dandy pointer.
Hey Mitch,
Yes.
before you get started, I got an iPad 2, I updated it to iOS 8, it takes 2 minutes to boot up, just in
Yeah,
case
I'm sorry you shouldn't have done that.
I know, I'm just saying, anything else I wanted to do.
Yeah, if you have an iPad 2, iOS 8 is supposed to work on it, but it works very, very slow and it's problematic. I suggest you not do it, and I suggest you go get an updated iPad. There should be new iPads coming out later this month. I think the announcement date is the 18th. Also, if you have an iPhone 4S, that can also be problematic. How did you do, Vicki?
We only updated my husband's, and he hasn't said anything, so I'm not sure he noticed if there was a problem, but he's been okay.
It can be problematic, yes.
I have Bill, I have a 4S, and the update went fine, but it slowed down the machine. I would not have done it had I realized how much.
That's what I understand. What I understand is if you have an iPad 3 or above, or an iPhone 5 or above, it's fine, but those ones they say will work, the 4S and the iPad 2 do not work very well. Yes, Jerry?
Sometime this month, I expect Apple will release Yosemite for the Mac, which is 1010. And it will be the same thing. There are a lot of old Macs that, quote, will be able to run Yosemite. The right word will be there'll be a lot of old Macs that can walk Yosemite. So if you have an older Mac, you should be very cautious about upgrading to Yosemite because it will actually get so slow you'll want to throw it out and go buy a new Mac.
Okay. And one other benefit of being a member, I mentioned that you get access to our discussion board. As you can see, we're videotaping today's meeting. George usually does that. He started doing it a year or so ago, and it's been a great benefit. I think that everybody would agree it's been a great benefit because if you miss a meeting and you want to see it, he posts those usually a couple days afterwards, and you can go in and view the entire meeting, and you can ask questions to yourself. And then I asked Jerry before the meeting to just comment on this malware that's been going around the last couple of weeks. And I know we've had some action on the discussion board, and I wanted him to just comment on that and maybe put some people at ease. Jerry?
Thanks, Mitch. If you are a member of our discussion group, you received my email, a very long email, which was covering this issue of the malware. If you aren't, I'm going to try to capsulize it for you. First off, let me start by saying there are two types of problems, viruses and malware. A virus is something that gets into your computer and spreads and goes to some other computer and spreads. You don't install a virus. It installs itself. There are no viruses for a Mac computer. If you're running Windows on your Mac computer, there are viruses for that window partition, and you need to worry about viruses. Malware is something that's going to do bad things for your computer, and you install it. You may not want to install it, but somebody got you going, and you installed it, and then your computer is all screwed up. The one that is going around right now has affected not many. I think it's about 20,000 Macs worldwide. So it's a very small percentage of people. The ones who have installed it were those who thought they could get a free copy of Adobe Photoshop. So they went to a site and said, "Would you like a free copy of Adobe Photoshop?" And they said, "Sure I do." And they clicked it, and it downloaded. And then it said, "Would you like to install it?" "Sure." And they clicked it. And the Apple computer says, "We don't know who this came from. It could be somebody bad. I don't care. I'm going to install it." And now they have malware, and their computer is screwed. Don't go to sites that offer free stuff unless you know what it is. Do not defeat the security checkpoints that Apple puts in there. That's it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Can you uninstall it?
I'm sorry?
Can you uninstall it?
If you have a backup clone from before you installed it, you could do that. But don't install stuff that you don't know who it's coming from. I mean, it's like don't take candy from a stranger.
Okay,
Mitch,
yes,
in the same vein, just today I got an email, John,
yeah,
from Costco,
yes,
telling me that I got a $7, $8 reward. They only pay for October,
right.
but they only pay once a year. And this was this long URL I was supposed to click on, but I'm not gonna do it, because
Yeah.
the charge,
Yeah, things are really tricky out there. If you want a good lesson on malware and phony text messages and so on, Google the subject and you'll come up with plenty of examples. But the general rule of thumb is that no institution with any credibility at all. It goes for a retailer like Costco or Macy's, any banking institution, financial institution, any government agency. None of them will email you, text you, or call you and ask for personal information such as their social security, name, address, telephone number, and so on. So if you get anything like that, and it'll usually have a degree of urgency, like if you don't respond to this email in the next 12 hours, your bank accounts are going to be shut down, and you panic and you hit the button and you're done. Be very cautious because, that's a good point. If you look at the URL, which is in the top of the thing, the URL is this up here. If it's from Bank of America and it doesn't say bankofamerica.com up there, then something's wrong, even if it looks like it's from Bank of America. So, enough on that. This is their new course at lynda.com. It's an excellent short course on what's available now. And here are the, I just want to show the items in the course. This is the index here. A little hard to read, but the ones that are flagged are the ones that when I went through, I wanted to go over today. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to go over all of them, but we're going to start with the general one, and I'll get that up now, and then we'll talk about it.
If you've been using iOS 7, when you first upgrade to iOS 8, you may not notice much of a difference. At first glance, it doesn't look like anything's changed.
Is it loud enough back there?
It's pretty much the same. But there are a lot of small changes that I wanted to take a look at as we start going through the new features. Now I say they're small, not because they're insignificant, but because they're quick and really easy to talk about. The first thing you might notice is that there are a few new apps. You might notice the icon for the Health app, which is a new fitness app, which we'll talk about later. If you did not already have the Podcast app, then you'll see it will be there. The Podcast app is now one of the standard bundled apps that you do not have to get from the App Store. This also means that you cannot remove it from your device. So if I touch and hold on the icons, you can see apps that I've installed, I have a little X, I'm allowed to delete them. But apps that come bundled with iOS 8 do not have an X on them, and I'm not able to delete them. The home button, swipe back to the first page. Now as you open some of the other familiar bundled apps, you may notice some changes. The camera has several new buttons, but we'll talk about those later as well. But let me open up the Weather app. Now, because this is the first time I've ever opened the app on this phone, it's going to ask me to give permission to use location services, and I'll go ahead and allow that. In the Weather app, you'll see that you now have a full week forecast if you scroll down, rather than the 5-day forecast that was in there for iOS 7. And if you keep scrolling down, you'll see there's even more information available that wasn't there before. This information might be really useful to you if you're a sailor. Now, so far these changes aren't that big, but there are a bunch of other really useful changes that you might not notice at first. Let's take a look at something that makes it easier and faster to get in touch with the people that you contact most often. I'm going to double tap on the home button, which brings up the multitasking screen. This is where you can go to flip between recently opened applications. But new in iOS 8, you're going to see recent contacts listed up in the multitask screen as well. If you want to get in touch with one of these people, just tap on them here, and you can see I have all the options available. I have Garrett's phone number, so I could call him on the phone, I can send a text message, or I can contact him through FaceTime because he has an iCloud account. If I hit the message button, it'll flip me over to the Messages app, And I already have a conversation going with Garrett, so it's gonna jump me right into that. Now I'm gonna open up that multitask screen again by double clicking on the home button. And as I said, you see your recents here. I'm gonna swipe over to the left. If you have contacts in the phone app stored as your favorites, those would be revealed when you swipe to the left. I don't have anybody in my favorites, so I'm gonna hit the home button, go back to the home screen, I'm gonna go into the phone app, and I'm gonna jump over to the favorites tab, and I'm just gonna add somebody to my favorites list. I'll hit the little plus button, and I'm gonna find Garrick. I'll tap that, and I'm just gonna choose his phone number to add that to my favorites list. So now Garrick is on my favorites list. So now if I go back to that multitasking page, I'll see that I've got my reasons listed here, and I also have my favorites listed. Now you may see it laid out where you don't see the favorites on the screen, and you have to swipe over to the left. The reason
What happened to our sound?
I don't have that situation is because the recents, so there's not enough there to push my favorite off to the side. But you can see the idea there. I can have my recents and my favorites easily in the multitasking screen. Another thing that has received a very small but very valuable tweak is the sharing panel. And there are a few different places on an iOS device where you might see the share panel. Let's go into the Photos app, for example. And I'm gonna open up a photograph. This is a picture of my dog, Ozzy. And let's say I wanna share this photo with somebody. Well, I just hit the little share button down at the bottom, and I get a bunch of options. I can send this photo through an SMS text message. I can upload it to Facebook, or I could use it as my wallpaper. If I swipe over here, there's an option to print it, but I can only do that if I have an AirPlay printer set up. Now the new feature here is if I swipe all the way to the right on both of these lists, there's a More button. The More button is there to let you change this button layout. I'm gonna hit that, and let's say I never use Twitter, so I'm gonna disable that just by tapping that here. And maybe I want Flickr to be the very first option, so I'm gonna drag that all the way up to the top. You notice if you just grab those little handles, those three horizontal lines, you can move these items. You know what, I use Facebook a lot, so I'm gonna move that into the second place. And then I'll hit done. And now you'll see that the options in the share panel have changed their order. I'll do the same thing down here.
What happened?
Let's say I want to print things a lot.
George,
So I'm gonna grab the handle for print, move that to the top, hit
Sure.
done,
What are you talking?
and now
it's frozen.
It might be it's not downloading at the right speed.
it will be the very first option on the list. Now keep in mind that your priorities for sharing are different based on which app you're sharing from. So it's nice to know that the settings you choose for the sharing panel are different for each
All right,
app.
it's coming back now.
So if I jump over to Safari, I've got a web page open here, and I might want to send the address for this web page to somebody. So I can hit the share button here. I have the same basic sharing options, but the order of these buttons is not the same as they are inside the Photos app. And in fact, I could change those here. I could hit More. I'm going to put Facebook up to the top here. But it's interesting to see, even though the order is different between these apps, you'll notice that Twitter is still disabled because I disabled it over in the Photos app. So I'll hit done here. And again, I want to print a lot. So I'm going to hit More, and I'm going to move print to the top of the list. Hit done. And now I've changed the order of items here in Safari as well. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. I don't actually want to share anything, and I'll go back to the home button. So let's finish up with a few things in your device's settings that might come in very handy. One thing that's very important to me is making sure that I have enough battery power to keep my phone running throughout the day. Now, as I'm sure you know, one way to conserve battery power is to avoid running apps or doing certain operations that take up a lot of power. But sometimes it's hard to tell which functions are eating up your battery. So take a look at this new feature. I'm going to go into Settings, into General. I'm looking for the category of Usage right here. And then I'll choose Battery Usage. And from here, I can see a list of all of the apps running on my phone and how much battery power each of those apps are taking. I can see that my home screen is taking up the most battery power. That's probably because for the past few minutes, I've just been doing things on the home screen. I can see that Safari is barely touching the battery at all, and the weather app really is not demanding. So this will help me decide if I want to quit some apps or just avoid using certain apps that take up a lot of battery power. Remember, if you want to quit an app, this is not a new feature, but it's good to know. You can just double tap on the home button to go to the multitasking screen, move over to the app that you want to quit, and let's say I want to quit weather. I just swipe it up, and that app is quit, and it no longer takes up battery power. I'll go back to the home screen. Now, while we're talking about battery power, let's talk about the Find My iPhone feature and how that relates to your battery. Find My iPhone is really great. If your phone is ever lost or stolen, you can use that feature to locate your device. But if you lose your device and it runs out of power, then you're not going to be able to locate it. You can only locate a device if it's powered on and connected to the network. So let's take a look at this new feature inside of Find My iPhone. I'm going to go back to Settings, and I'm going to hit the back button a few times to get back to the front page on Settings. And I'm looking for the category for iCloud. I'll tap iCloud and scroll up here. I'm going to go into Find My iPhone. And now you'll see inside of Find My iPhone, there's an option for Send Last Location. And like I said, what this does is, if the iPhone is about to lose battery power, right before it shuts off from low battery, it's going to send its last known location up to the iCloud server. So if you ever need to use Find My iPhone, at least you'll have a chance of finding where your phone was when it ran out of battery power. So I definitely recommend turning this on. So now we have a good start checking out some of the new features in iOS 8. I hope you start using some of these small but very important new tools.
Okay, I forgot to ask, how many people are on iOS 8 now? Almost everybody here. How many people aren't? Let me ask that. Okay, 3 or 4, okay. And how many people have an iPhone 6 or a 6 Plus? Yeah, they're really hard to come by, I can tell you that. Okay, any question, one other thing I wanted to mention, and this is, we've had this on our blog a lot, I've had these problems. There are known problems with Bluetooth and phone and automobiles. I reset mine in my MDX, and everything seems to work fine except the auto dial from my favorites. They're all listed there, but when I hit the dial them, it just does nothing. But I can listen to books, and I can call people by hitting the phone, and the number pops right up. But actually, pulling from the library, if it won't do it. I haven't played with my wife's Lexus yet, but I know I have to reset hers. Any other experiences other people want to share on that? Yes.
If I go to luna.com, can I hear this program again?
Yes.
There's so much thrown out. That
Yes.
No, she has to be signed up.
Yeah, you have to be signed up. You have to be a member.
I am a member.
Okay, then you have to email George and ask when is a week available, and he will assign you a week. And that week, you will get a notification that here's your log-on information, and then you will be able to log into lynda.com and do any tutorial you want.
Would we ask for this presentation?
No, you would just ask George that what weeks are available. I need a week. He would tell you what weeks are available. You'd sign up, correct? Then at that week, let's say, I think he's out in November now, aren't you?
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
Yes. He's out in November now, and
It's not much.
he said your week is the 3rd week of November on, what is it, Tuesday or Wednesday?
But if you send me an email, rubengeorge@mac.com, and if I get a cancellation, I'll make sure you get a week.
Yeah.
But Mitch, what do we ask for When we go into Linda, will
When
we
you
get
go- when you go into Linda, you would just search for Apple tutorials, or actually this one comes up on the first page.
You can go into lynda.com at any time. Anybody in the world can go in there and search around and see what's available. You just can't watch. And each of the courses have some that are free that you can watch. So you can investigate and get an understanding on how to maneuver on lynda.com at any point in time. You don't have to be assigned a week.
they could rent for a
Yeah, you got it, rent for a month, it's $25 a month.
month? That's what it was, I don't know what it is now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still is.
$25 a month, so if you don't want to wait, you want a whole month, you can just sign up directly with lynda.com, yes.
Vicki Kelber, if you can't wait for lynda.com, if you just Google new features iOS 8, there are so many articles out there on the internet and probably even some YouTube videos.
There's lots of YouTube videos.
And if you want it for a specific app, like the sharing in photos, if you Google that, there's so much out there.
There's an Apple, Charles Trainer, there's an Apple 400-page thing you can download for the iPad and the iPhone. It's like
Yeah,
a
there's
book.
an Apple user book.
And that
Right, it's
pretty
in,
much
it's
right.
in iBooks, if you go to
Yes,
iBooks.
that's right.
It's an iPhone.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be posting this, or Jerry actually puts it on our website, but this will be on YouTube, and you'll be able to watch this whole presentation.
However, Carl,
That's what I was gonna say.
okay.
I just want to ask a question. I used to be able to delete photos very easily because you could just use 2 fingers. Can you still do that?
Could you repeat what's being said? I can't hear.
When you used to be able to delete photos on the iPad or the iPhone, you could highlight them with 2 fingers instead of having to tap each one. Can you do that now? Or have you not?
You know what, I have not been into the Photos app enough to tell you that, but I know that the Photos has changed a lot,
Yeah.
and there have been some articles that they are going to bring back the camera roll again, because there's been so many complaints, but the same article said they didn't know if the camera roll was going to come back in the format that it used to be in.
Well, I tried to get rid of my photos using iTunes. When you go in and you pick another folder,
Yeah,
it wouldn't go away.
yeah, I have not, there is a session here on Photos, but and we might get to it today, I don't know.
I'm going to see that next week.
Okay, I'm going to move on then. Yeah, one more thing, Don?
If you said it, I missed it. When you have one photo selected and you press the sharing thing, he said you can rearrange those icons. Can you delete the ones that you could not use?
I think you can delete them, yeah, if you turn them off, and you can delete them.
Thank you.
I just have a photo and there's a trash box at the bottom.
Right. Okay. Did you hear that?
No.
Charlie?
Yeah, I know that, but you can't delete group, can you?
Oh, I didn't try that.
I mean, I've got about 1,500 on there, and I want to get rid of them because I put them on my computer, so it's taking up gigs of storage, which I don't need. But I can't get rid of them in one lump sum, unless I go back into iPhoto, and when it says delete photos, I say yes. That's my problem.
Yeah, you might be able to, yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Sometimes it depends how they got into your iPad. If you took them with your
Yeah.
iOS device, you can do that usually.
Mhm.
But if you transfer them from
That's right.
your computer,
Yeah.
I think you have to go back to your computer to delete them.
No, I tried to do that, and that's
Yeah.
where I ran into the same problem. But I
Yeah,
will try.
but they have changed that quite a bit. And I, quite honestly, have not used that photo, tried to delete a lot of photos at one time. I know that I missed the camera roll and all that because it seems different, I haven't gotten used to it yet. Okay. So I want to jump around here a little bit, and I want to go over these in the order, because I thought some were significant. So let's talk about Safari changes.
Everything that we've seen in this course so
Okay.
far is valid on the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and the iPad. iOS is the same operating system on all of those devices. so the features are generally the same. Safari is one exception. There are a few new useful features in Safari, but they can only be found on the iPad version. Let's take a look. I'm going to go ahead and open up Safari. And the first thing I want to point out is fairly small. The bookmarks button has moved from the right side over here to the left side. And if I hit the bookmarks button, I get this sidebar rather than a floating pop-up window like you saw in iOS 7. Now the same options are here. You get bookmarks, the reading list, and shared links. It's just a different layout. And that layout change is because it will more closely match Safari in Yosemite, which is the upcoming version of Mac OS 10. I'm going to go ahead and tap the bookmarks button again to close that. Now here's another layout change that will match Yosemite. When I scroll up on the web page, you'll see that the address and the tab bar shrink away. Let me show you that again. I'll scroll all the way down, and you'll see that the address bar and tab bar are well visible up here. But if I scroll even a little bit on the page, it'll shrink down, giving me more space to browse and read my web page. Now, of course, if I scroll all the way down here, as soon as I scroll all the way up to the top of the page is when you see that bounce back to full size. Another way to get it to full size, if you're really far down on a really long web page, is to just tap up here at the top of the screen and it'll pop up again. In previous versions of iOS, tapping on the top of the screen like that will automatically scroll the web page up to the top. Now that does still work here. You just have to tap once to bring up the full-size address bar like I just did, and then tap a second time to scroll up to the top of the page. So let's see that again. I'm down at the bottom, I tap once, brings up the address bar, tap again, scrolls up to the top of the page. And again, the way the address bar and the tab bar shrinks away like that will more closely match Safari on Mac OS 10 Yosemite on desktop and laptop computers. Now, here in Safari, you'll notice that I have a lot of tabs open. And I can tap between these tabs to open up the different pages that I already have open. Just tap on these tabs, and it opens up those pages. Now, if you don't already know, you can create new tabs just by pressing the little button right here, this little plus button, and then you could type in a website address, and you'll go to another page without losing whatever page you have open in other tabs. And of course, I can close a tab just by hitting the little X button on that tab. Now again, I've got a lot of tabs open. You can see them all up here. In iOS 7, if you had too many tabs open, there would be a little button over here on the far right side that would give you a little pop-up window to let you flip through all of the tabs that don't fit in the space up at the top of the screen. But now in iOS 8, it doesn't matter how many tabs you have open. They'll all be visible here on the tab bar all the time. But they will scrunch up together really small on one side or the other. So you'll see the tabs are pretty big over here on the right side, but they're all scrunched and stacked up on top of each other over here on the right side. Now I can swipe left and right on the tab bar to kind of stretch out the tabs on one side or the other, which makes them easier to browse. But here's another really easy way to browse through open tabs in iOS 8. All I need to do is hit this button up here in the top right, and it shows me all of the tabs that I currently have open. And what's more, it groups those tabs by specific websites. So I happen to have 3 web pages open from Wikipedia, 3 pages are open from the Two Trees and Olive Oil Company website, and 2 pages from Explore California. If I were to create a new tab, and I can do that here as well by hitting the plus button, and type in a website here, I'll go to Amazon.com. The next time I hit the button to show all tabs, you'll see that Amazon will be in its own little group here. And of course I can close tabs just by hitting the X right here in this view. Now let's look at one last new feature inside of Safari. I'm going to create a new blank tab. I'm going to go to the address bar. Now this is not just an address bar, it's also a search bar. By default, you can type in a website address, or you can just type in a search term and it'll search with your default search engine, which is usually Google. Now the search bar still does all those things here in iOS 8, but it's also added a new feature. So I'm going to type in New Zealand. Now of course, New Zealand is not a website address, so it knows that's not what I'm trying to do. It is going to give me previews of possible Google searches, which is great. But the new thing here in iOS 8 is that it's also giving me a Wikipedia search result. And I can just tap that and it'll go straight to that Wikipedia page. Now, it's not going to give you a Wikipedia search result for anything that you might search, but if you put something in the search and address field, if it decides that this is something that it can find in Wikipedia, it will give you that option right there in the preview window. So it's just another way of getting to content that you might want quicker. This is really useful for me because I use Wikipedia a lot. So now I don't have to go to the Wikipedia page. I just type in whatever I want to search Wikipedia for, and usually it will suggest a Wikipedia article to me. Now, for the most part, the features that we've seen here are all unique to the iPad. But this last feature, where you can type something in the search bar and have a Wikipedia article pop up, that feature is available on the iPod Touch, the iPhone, as well as the iPad. So those are the new features in Safari in iOS 8. When Yosemite is released, you'll see a pretty similar interface between Safari on all of your devices, iPod Touch, iPhone, iPad, and the desktop. That's just one of the new things in iOS 8, making Safari consistent across all of your devices. In this movie, I want to quickly address a set of features that we're not able to cover at the time of this recording. There's a set of features and tools that Apple has announced to bring enhanced connectivity between iOS and Android. Several.
Yeah.
It's not multi.
Any questions on Safari? Yes.
Not a question, but the people were not finding the weather app on their iPad.
There is no weather app.
There is not one, because in the movie, the guy was demonstrating an iPhone.
Yeah, it's on the
And
iPhone.
weather is on the iPhone and the iPod Touch, but it is not an app that's on the iPad.
That's correct.
There are many free ones
Yeah.
available, but I don't think one comes native to the iPad.
I think the one that they actually went to on the iPhone is
Yahoo Weather.
is Yahoo or is it the Weather Channel?
I thought it was Yahoo Weather, but I don't know.
I don't think it's the Weather Channel.
No.
It's just.
The Weather Channel's the one I always use.
Right.
It's just
Or
plain
And
weather.
it's free download.
Or AccuWeather, yeah.
It's just plain weather, Mitch.
Weather? Yeah.
It's just called weather.
It's called Weather, but you can download the.
Yeah, you can download others.
others, yeah. Okay, one more thing, I'm going back to iOS 7 that you mentioned there in the back. Hello?
Yeah, it has some.
Yeah. That would be an unofficial site, is that correct? And would you pay for that service?
No, you download it from Apple servers, but it's not an Apple site, but they are connected to Apple servers. So it's not somebody posting it. You're getting it right from the Apple.
So why are we reading all these articles that you can't go back? Have you gone back? And why did you go back?
Because I have an iPhone 4S.
Oh, the 4S.
It was
Yeah.
a mess.
Yeah, it was a mess. That's correct.
Best.
Thanks.
Can you post that on?
Okay,
I can post that if you want.
yeah, would you post that link to
Absolutely.
go on back? Okay, thank you. Yes.
Then, Andy, I'm sorry, that we sent something on.
Yes.
Brogy, my understanding is that you may still be able to download that version, but Apple will not sign it any longer. So when you try to install it, it's going to contact the Apple servers, and Apple's no longer signing off on that version.
You download it to a computer, and then you install it from the computer. You don't do it over the Apple network, otherwise it won't work.
Okay.
You got to download it to a device and then install it.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on the Safari changes? Yes.
Oh, no, I was, Missy Ryan, as to this gentleman's statement that the 4S is a mess with this new system, I have a 4S, and what are the symptoms of being a mess?
It works.
It works, it's just
It's
slow.
It's slow.
slow. I mean, it was
Yes.
just.
Are they working on a fix for that?
No, I don't think so. It's slow. And it's just the fact that the 4S processor is just not powerful and fast enough to work at the level that it needs to for the iOS 8.
So it behooves those of us who have the 4S to try to go back to the iOS 7.
Or get a new phone.
That's what they want to do.
Or get a new phone. Yeah.
What, does anybody know what they're getting for the 4Ss?
$100 from Apple.
$201 from T-Mobile. That's the trade-in price.
200 for Verizon.
Yeah, that's why the 201 at T-Mobile.
And what about, does anybody know what Gazelle is?
$100.
I've got that.
$100 for the 4S? Yeah.
Depends on your carrier though, doesn't it? The Sprint one wouldn't be as much as the Verizon one.
Verizon's giving the most, $200. And I'm in a fight with AT&T now because I tried to order and the order got screwed up. And they were giving me 200, now they want to give me 100, and I'm like, no, that's not what we're going to do. But
I know they give you 200 for a 5.
yes, well, AT&T was giving 300 for a 5.
They were giving 200 till the end of September.
Right. And that's on one way.
But Gazelle is actually extended.
They've extended.
They've extended because Apple is running late on the new
Yes,
iPhone.
exactly. Yes.
Bill,
Bill.
does the 8 work okay on the 5?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Can I try to go back to the 7 on the iPhone, but leave the 8 on the iPad?
Sure.
So it's just device to device?
Right.
Yes. The problem is that you will probably run into iCloud sharing problems.
And what about when I want to try to sync it with my MacBook Pro, which is now Mavericks? Will I have a problem syncing it with that?
No, that'll work. That'll be okay. But I mean, at one time, I had I had a phone and an iPad that were on iOS 8. And I had an iPad that was on iOS 7. And they were no longer talking to each other. Okay? Now I've got them all 3 on 8, and they're all communicating fine.
My iPad is still not communicating. That's about
Yes.
If you're still on Maverick, and I'm assuming most of us are, then you should not choose iCloud Drive when you update your iOS device to iOS 8. You should avoid that until Yosemite comes out. The only option is to just stay with iCloud rather than new iCloud Drive.
already done it, I don't know what it
Yeah, unfortunately, when they came out with all those announcements about you shouldn't go to iCloud Drive, a lot of people had already updated. I know I had, and there was no going back.
What's that? No, Jerry sent out a note way long time ago about not doing it. Some people just don't read.
No, some people have been on a developer copy since July.
But for some people, it's probably 1 or 2.
Okay, let's move on. I want to go over, there's a lot of changes, a lot of sort of neat changes that are hidden in mail, and I want to go over those.
Mitch,
Yes.
Vicki Kilber, I have a question.
Oh,
And it seems like, I don't know, maybe a silly question, but if you have backed up your iPhone under iOS 7
Yeah.
and go in and you've updated to 8, and if you go in and do a factory reset and then back up from your old one, will that be 8 or would it go back to 7?
As far as I know, it will not go back to 7 unless it's within a week, are they saying?
When you're backing up your iPhone, you're backing up your
Just the
application.
data, right, not the
You're not backing
iOS.
up firmware.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
So you have to back that up, then you have to download the old firmware, restore it,
Right.
and then
And then-
restore all
okay.
your apps.
Nobody can hear who's it is.
This is that.
That's not that. That's nice. That's
Okay, here's Dale.
We're gonna have a meeting next month on,
One big frustration with the mail application.
speaking with your hand.
You can't have one message open at a time. Now, I understand that the full screen nature of iOS devices makes it impractical to have separate windows like on a computer. But sometimes I find that I'm halfway through an email message and I want to jump to another message, maybe to copy and paste something. So let me show you how they've addressed this problem in iOS 8. I'm going to go into Mail, and I'm going to compose a new message. I could do that by replying to an existing message or just hitting the Compose New button. And I'll put in a subject line here. And I'll go ahead and type out my message. Now, as I'm writing my message, if I receive a new email message, I might want to take a look at that to see if there's any new information that relates to the message that I'm currently writing. So let me check my inbox to see if there's any new information about this meeting I'm trying to schedule. To get this message out of the way, all I need to do is put my finger up at the top of the message and flick down. And you can see that message is now tucked down at the bottom of the screen. I can see the subject line for that message is down here, telling me that it's tucked down there at the bottom. I can actually tap that to bring that message back up. But for now, I want to tuck it away. I want to go into my inbox, and here is a new email message. In fact, it does relate to the email that I was working on. So let me tap that and read that message. Okay, he wants to schedule the meeting, so that's good. I'm not going to go back to the message I was working on quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and reply to this message. And I'll type my response. Now I've got to this point where I really want to refer to some information that somebody else emailed me earlier. And I just want to copy and paste it from that other email. So all I really need to do is tuck away this message as well. Now I can go back to my inbox, and I'm going to go to one of the messages that I've got here. And I'm going to select some text in this message, copy it, and now when I tap on the message that I have tucked at the bottom, I can see it shows me all of the open mail windows. And I'm going to go back to the one I was just working on, and I can paste in the text that I just copied. I'll put little quotations around it, paste that, and the quotations. So you can see it's pretty easy to flip between these different messages. I could go ahead and send the message that I'm working on here, and I can go back to the message that I had before. I'm going to swipe that down again. I'll open up one more message, tuck that away, because I also want to show you that when you have multiple messages open like this, you can simply hit the little X to close it if you don't want to continue working on that message at all. So that's a really useful way of getting messages out of the way temporarily without closing or canceling them. Now I'm going to go back to my inbox. And in fact, I'll take a step back here, and I want to point out that I have two email accounts set up, my Gmail and my iCloud. That's going to be important in a moment. But I want to go to the combined all inboxes option, where I'm going to see all of the messages that have come into both of those email accounts. Now, as I'm browsing my inbox, there are some new features that let me modify and tag email messages without even opening them. In iOS 7, you probably saw that you could flick to the left on a message, and you've got an option to delete that message, also known as trash. That option is still here, but now there's also an option to flag the message, or if I hit the More button, I get even more options. I can quickly reply to this message. I could move it to my junk folder if I wanted. Or I could choose this new option to notify me, which will send me a notification if anybody else responds to this email thread. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. So the trash option is still there in addition to these other options. But I want to show you something else with that swipe action. I'm just going to tap to clear that back to the normal layout. Now, if I swipe just a little bit to the left, we get those options that we're looking at here. But if I swipe all the way to the far left side, you'll see it just simply deletes that message, all in one movement. I'll do that again so you can see it. Swipe all the way to the left side, and it simply deletes that message. Let's try that with this message here. You see it works the same. Now, let me swipe this one, and you'll notice that the option doesn't say trash, it says archive. And that's the difference between a Gmail account and pretty much any other email account. Remember I mentioned before, I have a Gmail account and an iCloud account. If I go to my Gmail, the option you'll see is archive. I'm not going to do that, so I'll swipe back to the right. But in my iCloud account, the option is trash. And of course, when I'm in my combined inbox, it just depends on which account those emails were sent to. So that's a really easy way to delete messages with one swipe. Now, when I'm working with my email, I'm what some people call a zero unread person. If a message is marked as unread, that means I have to deal with something in that message. Sometimes I'll mark messages as unread, even if I have read them, just so I know to go back and deal with them. That's really just my system. So when I get down to 0 unread messages in my inbox, then I know that I have something to deal with. Now, I rarely actually have 0 unread messages, but 0 unread is always my goal. So it's important that I always know whether a message has been read or not. You may already note that the little blue bullet here next to a message tells me that that message has not been read. Now, I could open the message, which would mark it as read, or if a message has already been read, I could open it and mark it as unread. But similar to the swipe action for deleting messages, there's a new swipe action to mark messages as read and unread. So if I swipe a little bit to the right, you see I get this option to mark this message as unread. I can just tap that, and now the blue bullet has come back. If I do the same action now, the option is to mark it as read, which removes the blue bullet. Now you'll notice I'm doing those small swipes, but if I do the long swipe like we did with deleting, it'll just mark it as read or unread all in one action. So it's short swipes to get the button, and the long swipe will either mark it as read or unread all in one motion. This is really handy when I come across a message and I know who sent it, I don't care about that message, and I don't want to deal with it. I don't even want to read it. Instead of reading it, I can just mark it as read, and then I don't have to deal with it. Now, everybody works differently, but these new features in Mail, being able to quickly delete and mark messages as read with a single swipe, and also the ability to jump around between several open messages, are really going to make my day-to-day work in Mail much faster.
Okay, questions on Mail? Yes?
What was that single gesture, Mitch, that he used to tuck it away?
The taking it down from the top to the bottom.
Mitch,
Not so passive.
how do you delete all the emails on your iPhone at one time?
You can't.
You can mark them individually and then delete the ones that you mark, but there is no delete all.
You can't just get rid of,
No.
if you got 1,000 you don't want to read.
There is a mark all, but all the mark is read or unread.
Yeah.
In order to delete them all, you would hit individually and then delete the group.
You could do shift,
What?
you could do the shift.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In other words, you hit the top one and scroll down, hit the bottom one with the shift key, and then,
Shift key on an iPad?
oh, no, but if it's on his computer, he could do it on his computer, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or if you have
You
a
can also select
I
all.
was answering for an iPad or an iPhone.
You can't delete them all. If it's connected to your computer as well, you could still delete them from your iPad now.
Yes.
You can't delete them all, just hit Command A, delete, and they all go.
On the computer.
That's on the computer. We're talking about the iPad or the iPhone.
Oh, I see.
The only way to do is to reinstall the mailbox and change the amount of time it shows the last messages, and the others will disappear.
Yeah, you can do that as well. That's
Yeah,
that's a good workaround.
What was that again?
You
Don't
delete
delete the account.
you delete the account
Right.
and reinstall it and then use something like 3 days. So it'll only give you the last 3 days. In fact, it shouldn't give you anything until they start coming in again. So you're back to 0. But you lose everything. You've got to have it somewhere else.
When it archives on Gmail,
Can't get rid of it.
where does it go?
Never goes.
It never goes away. I mean, it's just, they have an archive file.
There's an archive.
If you trash it with the trash can, does it go away, or is it still archived?
There's archive.
So
So
how
you
you
go
go
on the website to get rid
No.
No, you can't get rid
of
of
it? You
it.
can't get rid of it.
You can get rid of it. Okay. You can delete
Delete your archive on the computer.
Yeah. And then, some people that have done that regretted it. I mean, then it's, you know, one of the advantages to Gmail, you can always
So I go to
go
trash
find
and
it.
send it to myself, but I don't know why it does that.
Well, the same applies to Microsoft. Hotmail, it's still there. They just put it in a future deleted folder.
Doesn't it have the hard?
But there
But you
must
can
be a way of
delete it.
getting rid of them, because I spoke to a journalist about the phone hacking in England, and the reason some people were quitting was that the company had got rid of all their emails, they just deleted them. One of the newspapers in England just got rid of everything, so
Yeah.
nobody could find a trail. They know they're guilty, but they can't prove it.
Yeah.
So it can be done, but you've got to know what you're doing.
It can be, yeah. It
Maybe
can be
go
done.
away
I
from
mean,
the service.
the IRS proved it can be done. Yes.
Kathy Delano. Does people run into the same issue if you use Facebook? In other words, I know my mother found notes I had sent to somebody 5 years ago. And then I realized this stuff was on, is there any way of deleting this stuff on Facebook? Or they just keep it forever and you can't delete old notes and
You can delete posts on Facebook.
You can delete what?
Posts. If they're your posts.
yeah, it's on my timeline.
Yes, you
And
can
all of a
do-
sudden things were, like 4 and 5 years old and
You can delete those posts. If you pull up the post, in the right-hand corner, there's a small little thing. And you hit on that and it'll just say remove.
great.
Is it gone permanently?
Yeah, it's gone permanently from your computer, but trust me, Facebooks and Google and all the rest of them, they keep it forever. The only ones that erase things and they're gone forever is the IRS.
Before people start running out, we failed to mention, next Wednesday, Dennis DiGiacomo is going to be our speaker. He is going to cover 2 things, I think, one or the other: identity theft or malware. So if you're a little bit interested in identity theft, I've been there. If you're a little bit interested in malware, I hope none of you have been there. Next Wednesday, 11:30.
Is he going to cover both topics?
I thought it was identity theft, but he also wants to talk about that malware thing.
Okay, good. Okay, we have a few more minutes, so let me, yes.
You want to go on?
Yeah, but I gotta look at them here first. See if we have time.
Mitch,
Yes,
a couple of us are trying to do that stuff with the message.
Yes.
and on our iPads, and it won't work. Just swipe down.
the message?
We talked about it, just did it.
The new
I
message.
can't do
You
that.
gotta tell them
I
the new
thought
message.
I thought it was just me.
No, you
No,
You
you
have to have two.
You have to be writing a message
You
to
have to
drop
be
it.
writing.
Yeah, you have to be writing a message to do
You
it.
have to be writing a message.
It has to be a new message.
And then it will drop down,
Yeah.
as you say, as it.
Yeah.
I thought you said you could drop down.
Or an open message. An open message you should be able to drop down too.
How?
Can you? No?
I can't.
But you can put these over the top of the.
You have to put something in the subject line.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't need to, do you? if you bring it up, you copy from it.
Yes.
Yeah, put it in the put something in the subject line.
Did you get it?
We did, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, I don't know if I have time to go through any of these other videos right now. What I plan on doing is going over some of these in the future. The health app is really sort of interesting. It's only available on the 5S and above. But it really works rather well. I mean, I've been playing with it, and as long as I have my phone with me, it tracks the number of steps I take a day. If I get on a treadmill, it tracks those steps just as if I was taking a walk. If I go up a flight of stairs, it'll record that I went up a flight of stairs. Although the step thing, it did make a couple errors. I went up 3 flights and it calculated it as 2, but you can go in and adjust that.
That's too slow.
It's got another neat feature that when the screen is locked on the phone, you can actually, there's an emergency when somebody picks up your phone and it's locked. There's an emergency thing that lights up, and you can hit the emergency thing and it'll bring up all your vital statistics. So if you happen to faint, pass out, or in a car accident, and they see your iPhone, they can pick it up, swipe it, and they can hit this emergency thing, and they can see, oh, you're allergic to penicillin, or whatever you put in the device. Now, what happened is I actually had witnessed an experience with this. One of our members, it was George, and he was downtown, slumbered over a park bench, and his iPhone was just laying there, and the paramedics happened to be driving by, and I thought, well, we got to check this guy out. And they went over and they shook him and nothing happened. He was in a deep slumber. But they picked up his iPhone and they hit the health app emergency thing. And it said allergies. And it said allergic to Microsoft devices. This guy said, hey Mac, he says, get that Dell computer about 10 foot away. The next thing it says allergic reactions to Android devices. He says, hey, shut your phone off too. No.
In Sydney.
Yeah, that's right. I won't go into the other things that were on there, but you can put anything on there that you want. And it's pretty neat. You can list all your medications, you can list your vitamins, you can list Microsoft computers as an allergy. Yes, go right ahead.
I understand, Karen told me that someone passed out. If you push the emergency and they're all alone, they can find out who your last phone call went to and contact that person.
That might be the case. I did not see that yet, but that could be the case. But I know that there are people on there, like you can list, like on mine, it said emergency contacts, and I listed my wife, I listed my son. I know that stuff would come up. Yes?
Do you have to wear a wristband or something to get that to work?
No. Just got to have it with you. Now, the only thing different is like when I went to the gym last night, on treadmill, I usually set this in where the drink thing is. Well, you can't do that. You got to have it in your pocket. And but it apparently just tracks your legs moving.
It doesn't open your phone, it just opens that app.
The phone was just...
No, the emergency.
Oh, yes, exactly. The emergency just opens up that app.
But not the phone.
Not the phone. No. If you have a password on it.
Right.
Yes.
What's the point of this reduced motion tab?
Oh, the reduced motion, They have a couple of screensavers that you can put on there that'll actually float around in the background. And if you hit reduce motion, they won't float as fast at all.
It uses the battery, it's recommended as a battery saving as you turn it on.
I can't deal with 3D effects.
Okay.
I think it's to do with people who can't stand sort of motion and then move the phone.
Yeah.
It's a 3D
Oh,
effect.
and also, the phone used to, and I think it still does if you have the motion on, the screen, if you tilt the screen back and forth, you'll see the icons sort of float a little bit, and it'll stop that. So it'll reduce all that motion activity. I have mine turned off.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're out of time. I thank you all for coming today.